You know, it's frequently known that pet owners get attached to their pets. Well, we also know that gardeners can get attached to their plants, and I'd like to show you one that I've kind of gotten attached to over the years that's actually traveled with me from Florida here to Oklahoma. So it's about 6 years old, and it's a Staghorn Fern. And it's a tropical plant that I really received as a gift in Florida, and I brought along on the travel trailer and had it packed in, and it's survived, and we've kept it for many years, and it's just continued to grow and spread. And so now it's time to divide it, and I want to show you how we actually devised the frame to hold this on. Now again, it's a tropical plant, and naturally growing in the woodland areas, the tropical humid areas, it grows on trees. It's an epiphyte, and we're trying to kind of simulate that by coming up with a box. And of course Alan devised this one for us, put the lumber together for us, and that way it holds the peat moss, which is a substrate, and that's what we're putting in here. And it's the long stem sphagnum peat moss, and we've just covered it with chicken wire and stuffed that inside there and tacked it on. Now, as far as the plant over here too, let me show you some of the characteristics of it. Again, if you look down inside, you'll see that there's several of the plants now that have spread through there, and they have foliage on the inside too that kind of cup up and hold the peat moss, and so when you water it, it holds in the moisture area a little bit better. And with it being an epiphyte, what that means is that even though it's attached to trees and shrubs, various things in the tropics, it takes its food and moisture from the air. So it's not a parasite. It doesn't feed on the plant, so it won't harm them. And when this one started out, there were about 3 of them planted in there about this same size. And they've continued to spread and spread. And again, now it's getting pretty big to take over. So we've cut a little bit of a hole here inside the wire. And the actual wire on this one is about 2 inches by 2 inches, and we're just using chicken wire. You want to leave enough wire for the plants to, as it spreads, it will send up new plantlets through the wire. Now obviously that's too much root ball for us to try to stick in that hole, so I'm going to break a little bit of the roots off, and you can see that it's pretty root bound, even though it doesn't look real healthy white roots like a lot of the plants. But it doesn't take long for it to start rooting in the substrate, which is a sphagnum peat moss again. And just like anything else, I'm going to kind of make a little planting hole in the in the wire, and we'll slide that right inside there and kind of work the sphagnum peat moss around it again. And then we'll hold the wire, push it back up to kind of hold it in place in time, and we may need to go ahead and wire a piece together to hold it where it doesn't fall out. But the sphagnum fern will actually, or staghorn fern will actually start to root into the sphagnum moss, and once it does that, then it'll start sending out the plantlets. And that's one way you can divide it. We could actually cut some of the ones off. Here's one, a very small one that was growing in the top that I cut out, and you can see how small they are. And we'll stick that one over here. So division is basically one way. Now the other way that we can do it is if you look on the underneath sides of the foliage, and there's not any on this one, I'll have to show you on the mature plant, there's actually spores on the underneath side of the plant, a darker area. You can see we've got a greenish gray color into the dark brown. And I could scrape some of those spores off with a knife onto a sterile peat moss area that's real humid and sterile conditions. And a lot of times I put them in baby food jars with a few holes just to allow for moisture. And those spores will start to germinate. And let me show you a small one right here that's actually started to germinate just on the back side of the peat moss of this mature plant. And you can see how they've started to germinate, so we could even transplant that one over here. And that's one way you can actually start the spores to get new plantlets too, but this is very hard and challenging. Division is actually the best way. Now once we have the plantlets stuck in, and again we'll put this one kind of down here in the side to offset it, you need to put these, we're hanging them on a wall so they'll go on a flat surface, and they need to be out of the full sun because it'll burn them if you put them in the full sun. So you want to try to get them in partial shade to full shade, and you almost have to wet them down just about every day, because if you let the peat moss dry out, you'll lose the fern and they'll scorch on you. So you need to keep them moist, and then about once a month you can put in a liquid fertilizer with your water and keep them fertilized that way too. So really it's pretty easy to grow. And then we'll just hang it up, start to spread and fill in no time. We'll keep it moist out of the full sun, and then come winter time, with it being tropical, of course it's not going to overwinter. So what we do is take them in the greenhouse. You can take them indoors, but you need to have it in an area where you can take it to the kitchen to water it down, but in bright indirect light, not right up against the window, because again the light would burn the foliage, but just try to keep it out of the bright light where it gets some or keep it in the bright light but where it doesn't burn. And then look for scale insects, maybe a few mites, really not too many pest problems. And the dead stuff you're seeing now is just older leaves that we actually can come in and cut out, that are just old mature leaves. Sometimes you'll get some leaf spots, but just keep those cleaned out. Really pretty easy to do. A nice attractive foliage. It almost looks like antler horns is the way it's been described. So it makes a nice tropical addition to your garden. So if you find them in a container like this, you might try a setup with the lumber, and it makes a nice way to display the staghorn ferns. Again, it's a neat idea to try in your landscape.